Hi, everyone. This recording is going to be practice problems from section 3.4 on informal logical fallacies. Number one, either we require forced sterilization of third world peoples or the world population will explode and all of us will die. We certainly don't want to die, so we must require forced sterilization. This is a false dichotomy. It's presenting two options as if they're the only options. We can escape this dichotomy by providing alternative examples. So one thing you could do is to provide contraception to people. You could have sex education, and you could do multiple other things than requiring forced sterilization of people. So these are not the only two options. Number two, every sentence in this paragraph is well written. Therefore, the paragraph is well written. This is fallacy of composition. So fallacy of composition occurs when you say, because all the pieces have this attribute, or because all of the pieces are this way, then the totality must be this way. And so you can imagine a paragraph where every single sentence is written appropriately, correctly, but they have nothing to do with each other. And you'd be very confused. So just because every sentence is correct doesn't mean that the paragraph's good. Or in relation to student work, a lot of times, let me blow this up a little bit. A lot of times students will write things clearly, but the content might be too general or not really represent an adequate understanding of the topics. Number three, an athlete is a human being. Therefore, a good athlete is a good human being. This is equivocation in relation to the word good. The word good is being used in two different ways here. A good athlete is someone who displays the virtues of the sport or the skills necessary to be a good athlete in that realm. But when we think of a good human, usually what we would mean here is someone who's ethically or morally good, and those attributes would be different. And we all know that athletes, just because you're an athlete doesn't mean you're a good human being. And vice versa, it doesn't mean you're a bad human being. And if you're a good human being, it doesn't mean you're not a good athlete. But you can't have everything being everything. Number four, and that's because that word good has two different meanings here. James said that he saw a picture of a beautiful girl stashed in Stephen's locker. We can only conclude that Stephen has broken the rules because girls are not allowed in the locker room. I love these. These are one of my favorites. You might be like, what? You know, it's kind of hard to see it, but this is amphiboly. So this occurs when usually there's like a grammatical error or inconsistency, like a generic word, a generic error that creates ambiguity in meaning. And so here, James said that he saw a picture of a girl, a beautiful girl stashed in Stephen's locker. And then the conclusion is that you're not allowed to stash girls in lockers. So really what it means is that there's a picture of a girl and Stephen has put the picture in his locker. But the way that this actually reads is that there's a picture of a girl who's like in Stephen's locker. And I like those just because they're fun. I don't condone stashing people in lockers, but usually they end up being pretty funny. And they happen more often than you would think. But usually it's just an error. It's a fallacy kind of error, not necessarily somebody trying to pull one over on you. Number five, why is it so difficult for you to reach a decision? This is complex question. So in a complex question, the person is assuming something about the person. When did you stop being an alcoholic? Well, you're assuming that the person was an alcoholic. Why is it so difficult for you to reach a decision? You're assuming that it's difficult for me to reach a decision. And so it's a complex question. Don't let people do that one. People do that all the time. Lawyers do that, you know. Why did you kill your wife? Cops do that, right? Police officers. why did you kill your wife? And then the people are like, I didn't. I didn't. I swear. Okay, I did. I did. But don't let him do that to you. Don't let anybody do that to you. Lawyer up. Number 6, water will quench one's thirst. Water is composed of hydrogen and oxygen. Therefore, hydrogen will quench one's thirst, and so will oxygen. This is fallacy of division. So here, water is made of 3 molecules, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. And in that form, we drink it. It keeps us alive. Delicious. But then what the person's saying is, if you split the molecule apart into individual components, that hydrogen and oxygen would quench your thirst too, which we know that's not the case. Hydrogen and oxygen are gases usually. And so this is fallacy of division. Number 7 is in the back, but in the back of the book, so I'll let you look at that one. Number 8, butane is combustible, therefore it burns. This is not fallacious. This is true. If something is combustible, then by definition, it's something that can burn. And so it would not be fallacious to make this claim. Number 9, 20 years ago, Kung Fong, the great sumo wrestler, could have yanked up one of the fir trees in the new municipal arboretum with a single pole. Therefore, since Mr. Fong is as strong today as he was then, he could just as easily pull up one of those trees today. This is suppressed evidence. 20 years is a long time. And if you're a sumo wrestler, it's an even longer time, carrying that much weight around. And over time, in general, men produce less testosterone. They get weaker over time, just naturally because of hormones and bone structure and everything else. So there's some other evidence here that we need to consult before we're ready to believe that 20 years later, this guy could still rip a fir tree out of the ground. And don't do that. Trees are not, just leave trees. Trees are amazing things. Don't rip them out of the ground. 10 is in the back of the book. Number 11, Alex, I heard your testimony in court earlier today. Tell me, why did you lie on the witness stand? What is it? Complex question again, right? The assumption, the person asking the question is assuming that Alex has lied on the witness stand, has produced no evidence thereof, and is trying to lead someone into a trap. Number 12, Johnson is employed by the General Services Administration, and everyone knows that the GSA is the most efficient branch of the government. Therefore, Johnson must be an inefficient worker. We're going from the entire administration to an individual worker. This is fallacy of division. So just because, in general, when you go to the DMV, it takes a long time, or you think that people might not care about their jobs, that doesn't mean that every single person behind the counter doesn't care or is trying to slow things up. And I'm not bashing any DMV people. And there are people that care, and none of us should make that hasty generalization, which is another fallacy, right? But just because the GSA as a branch compared to other branches might be inefficient doesn't mean that Johnson is. He might be working his butt off, or she. Okay. 13 is in the back of the book, but it looks like, again, here we have a misconstrual of definition of what mortal means. So think about what the fallacy is, where we misconstrue definitions or we change them in inappropriate context. Number 14, each and every cell in this carrot is 90% water, therefore the entire carrot is 90% water. I'm going to say no fallacy on this one, although I think there are some other things to take into account if we really got down into the details. But if we're going by weight here, if that's what we mean, 90% of the weight of the cell comes from water, then because we know that the carrot is made up of cells, we know that 90% of the carrot would weight would be water, or mass. There are some other things to take into account. For example, if the carrot's dirty, there would be clumps of dirt and stuff on it that would change the mass of the carrot without, and water would not be a factor in that, or it could be in a different proportion. But anyway, we don't need to get into it too much. This is not fallacious if we assume some of those things that I just talked about. 15, and this is the one we'll end with. George said that he was interviewing for a job drilling oil wells in the supervisor's office. We can only conclude that the supervisor must have an awfully dirty office. I mentioned earlier, I like these amphiboly. Notice George said that he was interviewing for a job drilling oil wells in the supervisor's office. The way that the person has inferred here is that the job is for drilling oil wells in the office, which we know is not the case. So he's applying for a job of drilling oil wells, and in the application process, he's going to someone's office to apply for that job. But here we see that that amphibolous meaning or misconstrual of language based on a lack of accuracy. All right, well, that takes you through the first 15. I hope you found this video useful, and have a great day. Keep learning logic.